Okay, welcome everyone. So I'm Jay Lyman. I'm
Bienvenidos, soy
a
Jay Lyman.
librarian with Seattle Public
Soy un
Library.
bibliotecario con
And
la
let-
biblioteca de Seattle.
we're going to
Xin chào
start
mọi người, tôi là Jay, tôi là cái người điều hành chương trình ngày hôm nay.
our interpretation. So Kathleen, you want to start by sharing?
Sí, sí, claro. Me llamo Kathleen Pérez. Soy la intérprete de hoy para español. Y quiero decirte cómo interpretar, cómo coger la interpretación, el canal. Primero, escoja la función de interpretation que tiene un símbolo redondo de planeta en la parte baja de la página. Sí, debe seleccionar el idioma Spanish para poder escuchar la información en español. Por último, se deben de seleccionar también las palabras que dicen Mute Original Audio Feature para apagar el audio original, para no escuchar el otro idioma al mismo tiempo, lo cual puede ser muy molesto y confundir a quien está escuchando. Ok, vamos.
Thank you. Okay, next we're going to hear from Levine. Welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, I will ask Tammy to do it for me.
Oh, Tammy's going to do it. Okay, Tammy.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here, both of you.
Thanh Lam xin trân trọng kính chào quý vị trong phòng. Ngày hôm nay chúng ta sẽ dùng cách để mà có thể vào phòng nói tiếng Việt và nghe được tiếng Việt. Trước hết quý vị tìm ở dưới cuối trang của mình và những nút Translate để trong cái màn hình cầu nhỏ ở dưới. Rồi cái bước thứ nhì là chúng ta sẽ chọn cái chữ Select Language và chọn ngôn ngữ tiếng Việt của mình. Sau đó chúng ta sẽ dùng chữ Mute Original Audio Feature để mà mình tắt cái âm thanh gốc của mình để tránh cho những tiếng ồn gây khó khăn cho giáo viên cũng như những sinh viên khác. Một lần nữa Thanh Tâm xin cảm ơn quý vị và kính chúc quý vị có một buổi tối học được vui vẻ và an lành. Xin cảm ơn quý vị rất nhiều. Thank you.
Thank you, Tammy. And thank you, Kathleen and Levin and Iris for all that you do.
A todos.
We will start the interpretation now.
Vamos a empezar la interpretación ahora.
Okay, so that now you should be able to get the interpretation in each of the channels. And I want to re-welcome everyone again to the program tonight. We also have live captioning happening. So if you would like that, you should be able to enable that by hitting the closed caption at the bottom. And we are recording in all three of the languages that are being represented tonight. So in English, Spanish, and Vietnamese. So those will be made available after we've had a chance to caption and all of that and do a little bit of post-production. So without further ado, I'm going to turn the time over here to Michael. Michael Coffey is our presenter tonight. And so thank you for being here, Michael. And I will turn it over to you, and we can test out your sharing your screen, if you like.
Yes, I was just about to do that. Let me choose that. And hopefully that looks right for everyone. Hello. My name is Michael Coffey. I am the founder of Ardea Coaching, where I do coaching, helping small businesses to do their online marketing strategy and other business-like things. Today, we'll be talking about choosing a social media site for marketing your business. I want this to be sort of interactive, so if you have questions, you can add them in the chat, and I hopefully will see them, but Jay is the designated chat watcher, and he will interrupt me. I also have several places to pause for questions, so you can ask me when I do that. And if you don't want to be recorded on screen, or your voice or your picture or whatever, that is fine. At the end, we'll also turn off the recording, and there will be a time off camera for questions as well. So with that, I'm just going to jump right in. So which social media site is right for you? Well, let's find out. This is sort of a table of contents of what we'll be talking about. We're first going to start with what is marketing, because really understanding the breadth of what marketing is necessary to really pick the right social media site. We're going to have 3 main questions that you should be asking to help you choose. We're going to be looking at some data about the big 3, and there's an asterisk there on the big 3 because there's lots of little notes related to that. And then I will reveal the right one. Maybe. And then some time for questions and answers. And also I want to point out, I have my little guy here. I use a lot of old time pictures. And that is for a couple of reasons. One, you know, they're royalty free. 2, they also, when dealing with technology, sometimes if you suddenly find yourself confused or out of your depth about the technology, it's a reminder that everything new was old again, or that's not quite the saying, but the idea that everything that we do now with cutting edge technology is still a thing that humans did in some similar way without that technology. So if you get stressed, you see one of the old time pictures, just think, okay, I don't need to worry about it. You know, like those crazy new telephones. Well, yeah, but eventually everyone got used to them and understand them, and you know, now it's not a big deal. Same thing will happen with you. So if you get concerned, don't. Okay, so I start with a disclaimer. There are no easy answers. And with small business owner, where the overlap is between small business owners and social media, there's a lot of, I won't say misinformation, but there's a lot of misunderstandings and a lot of beliefs that aren't quite right. And so my goal today is to shake that up. So I want to first kind of break things down, kind of confuse you a little bit, so that those preconceptions are released. And then I want to supply you with new and better questions than you might have right now. Because that will guide you to better outcomes. So be ready to have some of your assumptions not turn out the way you thought. Okay. So this is Rand Fishkin. He's local here. Lives in Seattle, and he's started a number of companies. I'm sort of his target market, and he posted this on Twitter some while back. He says, I've been in digital marketing for 20 years and built multi-million-dollar businesses. Here are the 4 secrets no one tells you about how marketing online works. 1, just kidding. 2, if I ever tweet like this. 3, please block my account. 4, or assume I've been hacked. So there are lots of people out there on the internet who peddle the hope that there is an easy secret that professionals are hiding that makes online marketing easy. And this is him saying, no, it isn't. And, you know, anyone who's really trying to help you will ask lots and lots of questions and encourage you to ask lots and lots of questions. Anyone who says there's one quick, easy answer that applies to you without knowing anything about you, they're just wrong. You know, like I want to be nice, but yeah, they're trying to sell you something. So don't believe the hype. So what is marketing? This is the first sort of critical question. And I kind of explain it in a couple of ways, both of which I'll let you know. The first, which isn't as pretty a way of saying it, is that it's about explaining your offer. You know, what are you, you know, like, what are you offering to the customers that they actually want? You know, you're not trying to convince them that they want it. In best case scenario, they do already want it. And you are explaining an exchange that you would like to make with them. If you do this, you will receive that. Okay. So I forget who first said it, but there's a saying that's used in marketing sometimes that everyone listens to the same radio station, WIIFM. That stands for what's in it for me. Right? So you as a marketer, you as a business owner, think that people should buy your thing, but you want them to want to buy that thing. So they are thinking, well, what's in it for me? But oftentimes business owners say, well, this is why you should want this. I'm going to try and convince you to want this. And that's not how customers think. So you want to think of it as an offer. If you do whatever, if you subscribe to my newsletter, if you buy this product, if you come to our store, if you share this coupon with your friends, if you, whatever action that you want them to do, if you do this, then this is the benefit that you will receive. This is why that is a good thing from your standpoint, from your point of view. Not, please, please, please do this because it's great for my business. Because that people are not convinced by that. So that's one way to think of it. The other is what I call the 4 M's of marketing. I'm only going to give you 3 of them because the 4th M is beyond what we do here. But the 3 of the 4 M's of marketing are media. That's where the communication happens. Message. That's kind of like the offer. It's the thing that you want the people to understand. And the market. And those are the people that you are trying to reach. Okay. So you use the media to spread your message to your market. Okay. So that's marketing in a nutshell. If you're like I used to be some years ago, I considered marketing a 4-letter word, or however many letters it actually has. But, like I thought that marketing was essentially manipulation, and it certainly can be. But that's not the good kind of marketing. So, but people won't buy your thing if they don't know it exists. So you have to communicate with people. And if you communicate with them in a way that shows that you understand them and where they're coming from, you will be marketing in a good way. So keep that in mind. The both media, message, market, and the idea of making an offer. Okay. Now I see in the bottom right corner, I have a little question mark. Are there any questions? Again, you can put it in the chat. You can bring yourself off mute and ask.
I'm ready to ask them if anyone has them out loud, or I'll ask them if they come into the chat.
Okay, great. I'll just give a moment.
No questions from me yet, is one comment.
Great. I'm doing my job then, right? I'm being clear. Okay, so let's move on. The right social media for you is one that
truyền thông xã hội nào?
I think we got a question maybe from our Vietnamese interpreter.
I think that it was in the Vietnamese channel, but somehow it is still in the main channel.
Okay, so it's not a question for me?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I select earlier, but somehow I still in the Vietnamese channel.
Got it. Let me help fix that. Okay. Just a moment.
Yeah, sorry, now my turn, so I suddenly it's just.
It's okay, Levin.
Yeah.
Okay, just making sure I got the other ones as well.
Yeah, Tammy, I believe that Tammy already
Okay, let's try it now, Levin.
Sí, un momentito, que hay una pregunta de una
no, I still not.
que
I
están
still did not see that.
Just a moment. All right, go ahead, Michael.
Okay, great. So the right social media site for you is one that is the best overlap between the market you're trying to reach, the message that you're trying to convey, and the offer that you're making. And so these tie into specific questions. So the first one is, who is your audience? We're at the library, well, we are being hosted by the library. The library has lots of resources to help you understand your audience. These are the people that are listening to you. You want to know as much as you can about them. So on the one hand, some of it will be demographic information, things like age, gender identity, zip code where a lot of them live, size of household, amount of income, things like that. There is psychographics. So that's psychological kinds of things. This is not as easily measured, but it could be things like, what do they tend to value? Or what do they believe? You know, do they believe in alternative medicine, or are they hardcore science, or are they, you know, like, that's just one spectrum on which someone might land. I used to work in the tea industry. Ironic, given that my last name is Coffee, but I used to sort of think of tea customers generally falling into two groups. One I called the white hat lady, or the red hat ladies, which, you know, they tended to be middle age and older, typically identified as women, typically saw tea as a social occasion. And so it needed to be, if they were going to buy tea, it needed to be kind of pretty or smell lovely, or, you know, be in a cute little package, or those kinds of things. And then the other main category I called the tea geeks. And so those tended to be younger, tended to be men, typically were white or Asian, whereas the red hat ladies tended to be white or black. Often the tea geeks were widely traveled, and what they were interested in was information about the tea. They wanted to know, when was it picked? What cultivar of the tea plant was it? You know, so those aren't all demographics, right? It's kind of a blend, but I'm developing, by talking about these things, an idea of these two different audiences. And so you want to do the same thing. And you want to learn, where do they congregate? Where do they hang out? Where can I find a bunch of them? And do they really want what you have to offer? Or do you just think that they should? Because those are two very different situations. Okay, so if you can kind of gather a picture of what this typical customer is going to look like, what, you know, like what websites they go to, what stores they go to, what do they read? Do they read? How would they prefer to receive communication? Do they want to get stuff in snail mail? Do they want to get a text on their phone? Do they want to, you know, like all of those things? Get as much information as you can. Okay. Second question, what is your message? So this is reasonably straightforward. What do you want them to understand about you? That can be specific information. When I first started coaching, there wasn't really a thing. It wasn't widely understood what coaching is outside of a sports context. And so when I would explain what I did, people would say, oh, so, well, first, if I said I was a coach, they would say, oh, what sport? And then I'm like, no, not that kind. And then I would explain it and they'd say, oh, so you're a psychiatrist. And I'm like, no, because I'm not telling you what's wrong with you. I'm trying to help you. And they're like, so you're just a friend? And I'm like, well, no. And so my message was kind of like, what is this relationship like? That was early on what my message was. So that's sort of an educational kind of message. It might be brand association, right? So for example, if I were to ask you to think of a car brand that you think of when I use the word safety. I would bet that many of you would choose Volvo, right? Because that's sort of the thing that they emphasize in their marketing. And so you can just watch the ads on TV or wherever and sort of look at, well, what are they hoping, you know, each ad, what do they hope I will take away from this? Oh, these people, this company is cool. Okay, that company is inexpensive. Oh, this company is, right? Like there's all of these messages. So what do you stand for? Right? It could be values. That can be your message. We are the company that does whatever. So that's one part of the message. The other part of the message, if we think back to the offer, what is the benefit to the customer? That should be in there as well. If you are emphasizing, you know, we value whatever, whether it be a political thing or we value family or we value safety or whatever, you know, so what? I'm your customer or a potential customer. I don't know who you are and I don't really care. So to break through that, you have to tell me, you have to say to me something that I've already thought in my mind that I want. I will say the #1 best company that did this for me personally was the Droid phone back a number of years ago. And they had a bunch of ads that that you can find on YouTube or whatever. It was the Droid Does series. And they would always open with some sort of kind of not really insult, but they would be like, yeah, some people want their phones to look pretty, but we want our phones to actually do something. and that's how I thought about phones, right? And I'm like, oh, these people are talking to me. We see eye to eye on phones. Okay, so that's the reaction that you want to get when you craft your message. You want those potential customers that you would like to deal with to raise their hand, right? That's me. Okay. So that's the second question. Third question, how would you like to communicate it? You know, you may not have angels that can go out. This is the Annunciation, a version of the Annunciation, with an angel there speaking with a medieval speech bubble or speech scroll, I guess. But this gets down to, how do you want to get it across? And there are multiple parts of getting it across. So what are you good at? What are you good at? Are you good at doing video? Are you a great writer? Do you have a personality that people just, you know, seem to get along with, you know? Those are the kinds of things that will be your strengths and should play a role in choosing how you use social media or any marketing. So you want to play to your strengths if possible. That's one part. Another part is, what does the target market want? How do they like to receive messages? Could be that there's a mismatch, and you'll just have to figure out a way to bridge the gap if that's the case. But if you can find something that you're good at and they like receiving, cool. And then the last one is sort of, what do you want to have happen? And we kind of talked about this in a previous class where we talked about the strategy. So do you want to build a relationship? Do you want to make a sale? Do you want to, like, what happens when you have that communication? And there are lots of tools out there. I mentioned this previously. The business model canvas is a tool that a lot of people have used to kind of zero in on some of the key ideas. You know, some places have a very personal relationship. You and your doctor, you and your massage therapist, you and your therapist, right? Like those are all very personal kinds of relationships. But there's also you know, you may like going through the self-checkout at the grocery store because you don't want to talk to a person, right? That's a different kind of customer. And if you feel like chatting all day long, they're going to be turned off by that. Sometimes you just want, you know, your can of beans, whatever, and no relationship necessary. Here's my money. Thank you for the beans. I'm out of here. So those are aspects to think about. Okay, so if I zoom back here just a bit, who is your audience? What are they like? Their psychology, their values, their behaviors. Second question, what is your message? What do you want them to understand? What do you stand for? What are your values? What do you want to get across? And finally, what's the best way for this communication to happen? Okay, and communication is a two-way street, usually. So the right social media for you has a high concentration of your target market that you can easily reach, and has tools that allow you to communicate your message, your chosen message, in a way that works both for you and for the target market. Okay, you're looking for those two things: concentration of the target market and the tools that allow you to communicate well with them, knowing all of that other information. And look, a question mark in the corner. Anyone have any questions at this point? Again, chat or unmute yourself if you do. I will have a sip of tea.
Any questions? I'll watch the chat for them.
I will move on then.
Okay.
Please interrupt me if any questions come in. Okay, so here are the big three sites. And the asterisk there is for this subtitle question. Wait, what do you mean by the big three? because that's a really complicated question. And I'm going to go through and kind of, this is where I kind of confuse you a little bit. But first, I would love to hear what you think the big 3 social media sites are. What are the top 3 social media sites? Feel free to put it in the chat.
I'll read them out as they come in.
Instagram,
Instagram,
Facebook. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
I saw it pop up. You go, you read.
Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, LinkedIn.
Yeah,
What else?
those are all good candidates. Notice we've got 4 of the top 3, but
Snapchat, I'll add.
Snapchat, Twitter,
Twitter, yep. Any others? Any other thoughts?
one more. We should get one more.
One more. Google for Business. Yes.
Ah,
YouTube.
YouTube.
Here we go.
Okay, so that is a great lead in. Okay. Yeah, so first of all, we don't have necessarily a agreement on what the big 3 are. Right? I just picked 3 because at one point there was a lot of agreement on what the biggest 3 were, but so it depends. And I want to go through this list. I will say that that in this part of the class, I'm going to be sort of switching around with data. The specific numbers you can kind of ignore. Look for the bigger picture, because some of these numbers change so frequently, and the way that each site reports information is so different that you know, I grabbed numbers when I could find numbers, and so I have numbers here ranging from like 2016 to yesterday in these slides. So don't worry about the specific numbers, okay? We're looking at sort of giant sized trends here. Okay, so it depends on what the big 3 are. So number 1, Facebook, okay, cool. Number 2, YouTube. Now, someone did say YouTube, but some people don't consider YouTube to be social media because it's not super social. It's not organized around people that you know, or it doesn't gather people of similar interests together necessarily. It's, you know, some people would argue that it's a sharing platform, but it's not a social media site. Right? And so that kind of brings up the question, what actually is social media? Okay. It's not saying that YouTube is not social media necessarily, but you know, it's not the same as Facebook. It's like Facebook is definitely organized around like friends and family and social things like that. Whereas you can totally use YouTube, never leave a comment, never like anything, just watch videos and go home. Like it can be TV to you. And I don't think anyone would say TV is social media. So at least not watching TV. Maybe, I don't know. So YouTube, okay, maybe, maybe not. WhatsApp. Well, this kind of brings up that same question. WhatsApp is a messaging app. So is that social media? Like if I send you a text, are we sharing on social media? Or are we just sending each other messages? right? Is that so? Again, what's social media? Instagram. Okay, Instagram. Surely Instagram is, but that brings up a different question. Well, so well, on WhatsApp as well. So Instagram owned by Facebook. So is that a different site, or is that the same site? Because it's the same company, just two different apps. So does that count as a separate one? Because you can share stuff interchangeably between the two, right? You can buy an ad that runs on both. So is that one or two? And if it's, like if we decide that Instagram and Facebook are essentially the same thing, then Instagram like gets absorbed into the Facebook numbers. So there's a lot of questions here about just defining even what social media means, right? And what are the top three, like what differentiates sites from each other? Who would have said WeChat or Weixin? Facebook Messenger is another one. Okay, so that has the problem of, is it social media because it's a messaging app? And it's Facebook Messenger, so is it different than Facebook? Like, does that count as a different site? Douyin. Who's on Douyin? No one said that one. Notice we haven't gotten to Twitter yet. We haven't gotten to Google for Business yet. We haven't gotten to LinkedIn yet. QQ. Anyone using QQ? Right? So it's some of these are big in other countries and not in the US, right? So the location of your target market matters. Weixin, Douyin, QQ, Sina Weibo, all Asia. Okay, so something to be aware of. The big three is not, you probably shouldn't be looking at global numbers, because probably you are more concerned about one or two countries rather than the globe, right? That's that definition of your target market. Here's another way to slice and dice the numbers. These are the top, and again, these are numbers from 2016, but the top social media sites by the number of MAU stands for monthly active users. In other words, the number of people who logged in the last 30 days. Facebook, number one, not a surprise. Although it's useful to know that most people don't log out of their Facebook account, which means that whether they are active or not, because they are logged in the last 30 days, provides Facebook a little wiggle room on what they report for their numbers. Right? When was the last time, if you use Facebook, that you went in and you actually chose the log out of Facebook button as opposed to just closing your browser? Because if you just close your browser, you're still logged in to Facebook. You are only logged out if the next time you log in, you have to put in your username and password. WhatsApp, number 2. And QQ, number 3. There's the top 3. Then WeChat, number 4. Okay, Instagram. But of course, that's Facebook. Google Plus. Yay, Google Plus. And now finally, we see Twitter. Whew. No YouTube. All right, but that's the social sites by the number of monthly active users in 2016. But here also from 2016 are the top 7 by the percent of internet users who have an active account. Right? So not the number of people who are logging in, but if you take all of the people, what proportion of those people have an account? And here, those messaging apps, all gone. Those ones that are mostly Chinese, all gone by this measure. We've got all the ones that most Americans would recognize. YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Google, Google+, Instagram, LinkedIn, Pinterest. Like those are no surprise. Twitter's number 3, Google+, number 4. If we go back to this one, they were 6 and 7, right? Instagram was there, but LinkedIn and Pinterest were not on the previous one, nor was YouTube. Here's another way of looking at it. These are the top 7 sites by growth rate in the number of users. Which ones are growing faster? Well, in this one, Facebook isn't even on there. We'll talk more in depth about Facebook later, but yeah, Pinterest, number 1. Tumblr, they're not growing very much anymore, but you know, we have some of the familiar ones, but they're in a different, again, they're in a different order. And Facebook doesn't, well, it does exist, but it doesn't exist on this list. It doesn't even make the top 7. Here are the top 2 sites by age group, by age bracket. Again, this is 2016. So for the youngins, we've got Snapchat and Kik. This, by the way, was Kik's. This is their peak. Shortly after these numbers came out, there were complaints of bots sharing inappropriate content privately with underage users, and that kind of collapsed everything. And so now their user base has fallen to like 1% of what it had been in 2016. But Snapchat and Kik were at this point way up there. A little bit older, WhatsApp and Kakao. You may have heard of WhatsApp, but maybe you haven't even heard of Kakao. Google Plus and Facebook in that sort of sweet spot of you know, earners that are, you know, early family, maybe not early family, but you know, like families, heads of household, you know, kind of those middle wealth kind of age group was Google Plus and Facebook. As you got a little older, networking became more important, I guess, because Facebook was dropped in favor of LinkedIn. And then Facebook came back again for those looking ahead to retirement. Right? So the age group of your target market matters. So you can see here that there's lots of different ways of looking at what is a good site or what is a top site. Because the list changes depending on the question that you're asking. So you need to be asking good questions. Who has the most users is not very useful. Because if we think back, you want to find a high concentration of your target market, not just lots and lots of people. Okay. So, questions here?
Any questions? Besides, wow, why are there so many that I've never heard of?
Yeah. Oh, just wait. I have a slide coming up that has even more. Okay, I will move along then.
Okay.
So who do you want to reach? You have a definition of your target market now. Imaginary at this point, maybe. But again, go to the library. So worth it. But it's also useful to do a little math. So one of the things that I did with a client of mine was he was pretty sure, because of age of his target market, that he wanted to go for Facebook as his primary thing. And then this is a number of years ago. And so I did some calculations. I took all of the features that he described about his target market, and I calculated for each site, using the best numbers that I could find, both the number of people that were his target market and the percentage of people that were his target market on each of a number of big sites. And Facebook was like 4th or 5th when I did that. Because the concentration of...
That first one you saw it?
What was that?
Okay.
I thought I heard something.
If it was a question or maybe just background noise. Ask again if you have a question. We're happy to help.
Okay. So yeah, I went through and I calculated based on, you know, things like he was looking to market to sort of older women, several different categories. And so I would look up and I would say, okay, well, Facebook supposedly has this many active users. What percentage of them identify as men versus identify as women? And I'm sorry for the non-binary folk that might be watching, but there's a lot of demographic information that doesn't count you. So that is difficult. That's a difficult area to get statistics on. But, you know, like I would go through and say, okay, Facebook, what percentage of Facebook users are men versus women? What percentage of Pinterest users are men versus women? What percentage of Instagram users are men versus women? You know, like, and I calculated that and I'm like, okay, and older. Okay, so, you know, there's age categories that are fairly standard to use. Like, okay, what percentage of those women are in that age category? Okay, and of those people, what percentage of those are in the right income bracket and are in Washington State or in the US or whatever geographic divisions? And so I went through and sort of calculated that out as part of helping him. And Google Plus had like twice the number of individuals who met his profile than Facebook did. Even though Facebook had, I don't know, 10 times as many users, it had fewer of his target market. So that's why it's important to do some math. I know not a lot of people like to do that, but it's useful. I should also admit that I'm a part-time math teacher, so not a plug, just that's how it is. Let's see, was there anything else about that that I wanted to? Oh yeah. The other thing is recognize that the social media site that you are most comfortable with probably won't win. Because using social media as a marketing thing is very different than using social media as an individual person. So it's important to set aside what you are comfortable with and instead go to where the best match is for your customers, because you want to go to them. So if you happen to be super familiar with Facebook, realize that you're going to have this huge pull to think that Facebook is the right answer. If you are comfortable with Twitter, you're going to have this huge pull that Twitter is the right answer, right? Whatever it is, if you're comfortable with it, you're going to think, oh, that's the right one for my business, but it's probably not. Okay. Until you actually see the numbers and have data that shows this is where your people go, then you shouldn't choose yet until you have that. Like something that sometimes surprises people, that there are racial and ethnic choices, like Twitter. Twitter has a much higher concentration of Black users than any of the other sites. And there are every racial, ethnic category sort of has a social media site where that's the right one. If you are trying to reach a cultural or racial category, it depends on which category, but everyone has sort of a specific social media site. And it's just because that's how communities work, communities network. And so they tend to be on similar social sites. Okay, so here's the list, or some. So every one of those little blue names is a social media, or was, because I made that some time ago, but Wikipedia has a page called List of Social Media Networking Services, and those are all social sites, or could be categorized as such. And some of them are very specialized for a particular kind of person. There's a social media site dedicated to knitters. You know, like, you want to sell yarn, don't go to Facebook, go to, I don't know what it is. Knitters Anonymous. I don't know. Yeah, anyway, there's one on there for knitters. You know, there's gamer sites, there's sites for all kinds of things. Lab scientists. I teach sometimes at Seattle Central. And I had a student there who found a social media site. Specifically, he wanted to do like private jet charters as a business, and he found a social media site dedicated to socialites talking about their travel. Okay, that's perfect. Like 100% of his target market is that, you know, like everyone on that site is his target market, because it is a site dedicated to exactly what he's selling, right? Rich people flying somewhere. So, you know, don't limit yourself to whatever you think the big three is. Find these little niche places where practically everyone is your target market, right? There are LGBTQ focused sites. So if your target market is, you know, someone who's non-binary, that'd be a great place to start. Even if you can't find out how many non-binary people there are on Twitter or whatever. Okay. So there's a lot out there. Explore. Don't just assume you know what the right one is. And then these are just, I have a couple of slides here that are just example slides of how you can go deeper. So if you narrow it down to a few, come up with some pros and cons. So for Twitter, I've got, it's great for news, current events, that kind of thing, right? There's a lot of reporters that are on Twitter because whatever you write on Twitter is going to be short enough that you can include it in a news story or a quote, and reporters love that. It's easy to fill 280 characters, right? I had a client once who was like, oh, I think I want to do Twitter because I don't feel comfortable writing a lot. And so the fact that tweets are limited makes me feel like, oh, I could do that much. I could write that much. It's often easy to find stuff on Twitter because there's short posts, it uses hashtags, there's search, you know, like you can sift through stuff. And it's often used for customer service kinds of things. On the other hand, it's really difficult to handle complex ideas. I once did a class for the tea industry where the topic of the class was how, and I apologize to the interpreters, but it was a class about how the methylxanthines in Camellia sinensis antagonize uradenocine receptors, which is too long to put into a tweet. Like I couldn't even talk about what the class was about in a tweet. But you know, it's a technical topic. Twitter, you can't talk to subsets of your followers. You can only talk to all of your followers at once. And sometimes you want to talk to subsets. And it used to send a lot of traffic to websites. It's sending less traffic than it used to. And, you know, tomorrow, I think Elon Musk will be the new owner. At least I heard that the deal was supposed to close tomorrow. So who knows? I mean, tomorrow, Twitter might be completely different. Probably some chaos is coming up on Twitter, right? It's worth being aware of that. Facebook. It is the king of traffic referral. If you are looking at your website data, like what social media sites send me traffic, it's going to be Facebook. And they have lots of data on everyone, even people who are not users of Facebook. They say they don't, but whistleblowers and insiders have said, yes, they actually do, have shadow profiles. So in other words, they have data collected on people that aren't Facebook users that they can then connect with other people that are Facebook users. So they can be very targeted with sending out ads, though they don't always seem to use that. I once ran an ad for a class I was doing, and I said I want it to just go to people that are in Seattle or within 10 miles of Seattle. And about 75 or 85% of the people that interacted with the ad were not in the United States. So you know, 10 miles from Seattle should still be in the United States. So how good they are at that targeting is another question. And, you know, ROI stands for return on investment. For some brands, they say Facebook is really good. I have never seen that. But you do hear people say, oh yeah, Facebook is great for us. But every client that I have ever looked at the data of, it was better for them to stop buying ads because they were spending more on ads than they were earning in sales because of those ads. So you got to be careful about that. The other question, and this is kind of on the con side, is if you have to place ads, is it really social media? Because increasingly, just regular posting as a company or as an individual promoting something, those posts tend to get buried and very few people see them. The only reliable way to have something commercial be seen by a lot of people is to place an ad. And is advertising social media? Right? A lot of people think that they want to have social media because it's social, because it's personal, because it's interactive, because it's free. And advertising is none of those things. So it's useful with Facebook to sort of separate Facebook as an advertising outlet and Facebook as a social media site. Okay. So now this is from last year, mostly. There are a lot of cons to Facebook. There's new stuff from today. I'll get that at the end of this. But so none of the top 10 cities for Facebook use are in the United States. So if you're on Facebook, you are not reaching, you are mostly talking to people outside the US. If you think your customers are in the US, yeah, there's a lot of them on Facebook. But there's, 90%, 95%, I don't know, probably not 95%, but a huge number of people are not in the US. India has more people on Facebook than the US. Indonesia and Brazil are about the same as the US. So just with those 3 other countries, the US is under 20% of Facebook users. And then you add in the other 100 and however many countries there are. So yeah, US users are a very small minority. Pew Research published a thing last year that said that there's been no statistically significant change in the number of US adults since 2016. So those 2016 numbers that I showed you before, they're the same for Facebook now. They're still up to date because new people aren't joining in the US. Only 2% of US teens prefer Facebook. if you're trying to reach young people. Basically, since 2015, the number of young people on Facebook has been plummeting. It's, last year it was 2%. If you want to sell something, remember, this is where you're trying to understand people's thoughts. People go to Pinterest to shop. People don't go to shop on Facebook. So if you want to sell, go to where people are buying, right? Pinterest is 3 times as good in terms of people that are shopping. You can look at some of these other ones on your own. Yeah, I won't do any more on that slide because I got another slide. There are some other things we talked about. Values. There have been Facebook's own internal documents show that Facebook is the worst of all the social media sites for increasing teen girls' thoughts of self-harm. So, I personally don't want to be involved in that. Like, that gives me pause. So there's lots of things that you may want to consider not associating yourself with. I mentioned Tumblr in a previous slide. They gained the reputation of being the place where people posted pornography. It was technically a blogging site, but a lot of people made pornography blogs. And so a lot of businesses left because of that, right? They didn't want to be associated with that. That's also part of this choice. And of course, you have all the stuff with Cambridge Analytica and, sharing user data that they shouldn't have, and all kinds of stuff. And a screenshot from the PBS NewsHour. For those that might think I'm being a little gloom and doom about Facebook, well, PBS, is they didn't say Zuckerberg lied, but they did say that his public statements conflict with their internal company data. And so to bring this up to date, yesterday in Seattle, the parent company of Facebook, Meta, just had a judgment against them for $23.6, I think, million, because they had violated transparency laws for political ads. They were supposed to share certain information about where money came from for political ads and so forth. And they had violated those Washington state laws over 800 times. Just decided that they didn't want to do those. And so there was a $23 million judgment against them yesterday. So this is, they're not getting better. Social media, you kind of got to be on top of it. So anyway, I don't want to focus too much on Facebook, but I see so many people just jump into Facebook because that's the first thing they think of, and therefore think, well, now I'm marketing on social media. I picked the big one, therefore I'm doing the best. And it's like, well, no, it's more difficult than that. There is a little question mark there, but I only have a couple more slides, so I'm going to zoom to the end and then we can break there. So the winner here is where I reveal the best social media site for you to market your business. obviously, I'm not going to give you a specific answer. It has a concentration of your target market that you can easily reach, and it has the tools that you can communicate with them in the best way that you know how. That's really the answer. And thank you to all of those images and to you for coming. Now I will stop, and any questions? I'll say any questions on the record, and then Jay can do an outro, and and we can have some time off the recording.
Yeah, and maybe I want to share one last thing, because Michael mentioned coming to the library and doing research, and I put some links in there in the chat of where you can sign up to do that kind of research. Like, you know, we help people with customer research all the time. So if you go to that site where I said we have data, we have tools, just take a look at all the like various, you know, tools that we have there. You'll probably get lost pretty quick. And so book time with us, because we've gone down those kind of research, you know, research routes before, and will help. So the second link is maybe even the best first one to go to, where you can book time with librarians and look for a business and nonprofit information appointment or business information appointment in that list. And then there's a little register button that you can register for that time. And that's the ones. You also see others in that list, other kinds of appointments. So we have time with attorneys, time with a amazing credit coach who coaches on personal credit. Shout out to Tiara Bond, she's here tonight. So we have lots and lots of different things happening in there. But if you want that, the market research and customer research things, business information appointment is what you're looking for.